Hi everybody, we are in MONOR. We start a new hangout. I'm Sergio MONOR, the writer of the book MONOR. Here my partner.
Hi folks, I'm Rosana. I'm the co-author of his book in English.
And we start now with music.
I just wanna know why every time I come around, motherfuckers think it's funny looking at me up and down. I don't really know you, you don't really know the crew. Stop acting like it's funny, not shit you gonna do. Look at you, crew not hard. Motherfuckers don't know that the kid had bars, check ID, flow, police coming down. You always acting funny till police come around. You got a new car, but you leasing it now. I got a big dog on a leash, I'm releasing him now. You know police at the pound, I'm a beast in the hound. No crew loud, we ain't keeping it down, but we slowing it down. She got crew love, cause she holding us down, holding us down. Got young ends pouring out, they hosters now. Not shopping and hold us now. What? All ball main, all this designer, Gucci and Prada. Spending a lot on weed and anything I need. I'm trying to smoke but not a fiend. I'm not a jacket to the lean, so fuck all that promethazine. Don't make me start another scene. I grab your mother, make it scream and stab your brother, leave the scene, won't even see the car fleeing. Cop the old white whip, it stay clean, no. Always on the scene, winning like Charlie Sheen. No, they trying to take my green, but they can't, they not see low, can't see through.
And today we are lucky to have CULLEN in the other part of the screen.
And we are
the other side of the screen.
We are also together.
The other side of the world.
So
welcome, CULLEN.
CULLEN, welcome. Today we travel to San Antonio, Texas, from the Anglo-Saxon language speakers. Precisely today we're going to talk about language, isn't it, CULLEN?
Yes, that's right.
How we have been manipulated through language, because we have been. All right?
That's correct. Yes, we definitely have. And are continually being manipulated in many, many ways. And language is basically one of the core, fundamental, foundational ways that our perceptions are controlled through deception, which David Icke has a book called Perception Deception, which is very, very telling because, yes, perception is the way that we perceive reality. It's our interface between... Perception is our interface between ourself, the internal world, and the external world as that we experience as reality. And language is the means of communication which allows that external world to interact directly with our internal world. That's the barrier, that is the boundary between self and other, or the world around us. And so that is why language is the most fundamental, foundational core tool of basically making our thoughts known to each other. It's the way that we share our thoughts with the world and with each other. So language is a conveyance, as Terence McKenna had spoken in so many of his lectures, as it's literally we are forming the sound that gives form to our thoughts. In other words, our thought forms. Our thought becomes formed through the sound, through the resonance, the vibratory frequency of the thoughts that we create, and that is how I transfer my thoughts into your mind. And that is how we essentially, that is a form of telepathy. It is a form of telepathic communication. It's one step further from actually just having our minds meld completely together. As I use my words to transfer my thoughts into your mind, but it's essentially how we communicate telepathically. So yeah, that's just how I would open up the introduction to the importance of the study of communication and linguistics.
Do you think once we know this kind of information, could we separate the vibration of the words from the real meaning? Or... Because we realized we have been analyzing Spanish, Portuguese, and English, and we realized English is one of the worst programmed languages in the world.
Yeah, English is very interesting, and it is one of it's not the most recent language, and Spanish, English, Portuguese, they all stem from the root of Latin, which then comes from Greek and comes from Hebrew and comes from Proto-Indo-European, if you want to consider the mainstream linguistic tree as being valid, which most people like to denounce the mainstream linguistic tree. I find it very useful and very helpful. This is another interesting thing when studying the roots and origins of languages. Most people want to say that their culture, their civilization is the oldest one, is the one that all the other languages come from. So you got the Irish, the Celts, claim Irish Celtic language is the oldest. It's the origin of stuff. Then you got the Macedonians and the always claiming that their language is the oldest. The Greeks claiming that their language is the oldest. So I get in these debates all the time online with people, about which culture and civilization is the oldest. Everyone, for some reason, has a lot of pride around which culture is the oldest. For me, I personally could care less which is the oldest, which comes from which. It doesn't matter to me, because they all have the same roots. They all share the same traditions, the same stories, the same mythologies, the same, megalithic architecture. It was a global, ancient, worldwide civilization. So I don't know why I'm getting into that, but it's just where my thought is leading me. A lot of people always find that interesting. I find it interesting too, but I find it more interesting why that would be so important to people. But yes, language is definitely it's one of the ways. It's one of the main key tools of control. And again, it's the main tool for control of the mind, because if you can control, as Philip K. Dick had quoted in some of his novels, is if you can control the meaning of the words, you can control the people who must use the words. And we see this in very relevant and very poignant works, such as George Orwell's 1984, such as also Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And these were very similar parallel works, and these two authors are also very similarly parallel to each other. And I'm not too well versed on the roots of these different authors, but they both have similar motifs in their works of being the control and the manipulation of language to control the population and to basically maintain the state and the government's control over the people. In 1984, it was called doublespeak, and it was the language used by the government. In other words, the utilization of euphemism to change the meaning of what the term actually is. For example, the United States government uses euphemism. It used to be called propaganda, and propaganda comes from the Latin roots of to propagate, or to basically to throw out, but its original, I forget the roots off the top of my head, but it originally meant a tool of
propaganda.
It was originally comes from the meaning of a tool of conveyance by the Vatican, and that's very interesting.
Always the Vatican in the middle. Exactly.
Yes, because the church was originally the main source of propaganda. Is they would steal people's cultural roots and their cultural history, basically through their stories, their mythologies, their own theologies, their own cultural histories, their own religions, and the Vatican would or religions in general would steal from other cultures and change the meanings of them in order to gain a greater following. To basically to enslave and to conquer new nations and new peoples, and to incorporate those peoples under one rulership, under one government, essentially.
CULLEN, maybe the Vatican, they know the real meaning of the words, but they teach the another meaning to the population. Then the population, they know one meaning of this word, and the Vatican, they know the real meaning of the word. But that is very interesting that you are talking to us, that if we know the real meaning of the word, we can manage the population. We can manage the people. That is true.
Because look at the word shepherd, el pastor in español. It's clear. Clear as water.
Yes.
But the thing that I'm talking to the people, at the population, the people, the common people, they don't know the real meaning of the word, and the church, the Vatican, they know.
They have hidden the information.
They have hidden all the information of the real meaning of the word.
Yes, yes. The Vatican has basically the largest library and archive of ancient works and ancient knowledge in the world. Literally ranked in the catacombs under the Vatican, miles and miles of basically untouched archives and untouched texts that very few people are allowed to actually enter those catacombs and to look at some of that knowledge that the Vatican has archived. And the Vatican has stolen all of that knowledge and all those archives from the Library of Alexandria from ancient Egypt, which was the biggest library to ever exist in the history of the world. In the Library of Alexandria was very prolific in their translation of texts from all over the world. It was the cultural hub of trade and commerce of the ancient world. And so any ship that came into the Bay of Alexandria, they would board those ships. They would confiscate all the books on the ship, and they would copy all the texts down, and they would translate them into multiple different languages like immediately. And then they would return a copy they would keep the original book for the library, and then they would issue a copy to the ship that they had confiscated the texts from. So very interesting practice and very, very wise from my perspective. I think that's a very smart thing to do. But I'm sure the owners of the original, they're like, hey, I want it. I don't know if they want the original text for themselves, but it's a very interesting practice. But yes, so the original meanings of the words is in the study of the etymology of language. Just the etymology of anything in general. The etymology literally comes from the etymology of etymology, means the etym, meaning the truth, the true sense. So etymology literally means the study of the true sense of a word, or not just words, but anything in general. So it's studying the true meanings of something. And the root etymon of etymology is etym, is currently, and there's various different spellings and transliterations of etym in Hebrew you have emet, which is the same meaning, truth. Etym literally means the truth. It means the true sense, the true foundation from which things spring, which we attribute these things to the archetypes that we know of in nature, which is the plant, which is the tree, stemming from the seed, the core foundation of all knowledge, and then that seed sprouts and it stems, roots, and branches, and it branches off into history as we know it. So by getting to the most core foundation, that seed from which all things spring forth, in other words, like a wellspring, a spring of knowledge, a fountain that springs forth this water, this fountain of truth, this fountain of life, this elixir of life that we know of as language, because language is essentially, it is living, it is evolving, it is ever growing and ever changing. And it is that sense of how things change and the study of how things change over time that we gain a deeper understanding and a deeper knowledge of how things, how they affect us in our personal lives today, as well as throughout the ancient world and throughout history. And so by corrupting and changing and altering the people's perception of what that true history was, it makes people far more susceptible to either repeating the mistakes of ancient history, or it makes them more susceptible to giving their personal power away to basically to an authoritarian figure. In other words, like the government, or who tries to seek control over the populace by the manipulation of language and words. Confucius had said that wisdom is calling things by their true names. And so, in other words, by calling things by what it actually is. So this is how government uses, essentially, they used to call it propaganda. Now they changed the word propaganda because that sounds too obvious as to what it is. It sounds like control of people's minds. So they changed it to something more, so that sounds nicer to the public. So they changed it to public relations. PR is what it's known as today. And every corporation, every company has a public relations branch that deals with that deals with interfacing, you know, between the corporation and the public. So in other words, if the corporation is doing something horribly evil, you know, and the public is going to find out about it, then they're going to, you know, arrest everybody in the corporation who's doing this evil. So the way they control that is they conduct public relations. So they make things sound a lot better than they actually are. They make it sound a lot nicer than it actually is. And they make it sound like they're doing good things when they're actually doing very, very bad things. So that's how public relations or propaganda and what things actually are manipulated to sound like something that it's not in any way, shape, or form. And we see this more and more happening throughout our world nowadays, especially in certain European countries in the European Union, with censorship of free speech. And we see this especially in the United States as well now, with political correctness and, you know, these different ways of controlling what people say by basically, you know, controlling, you know, what people understand things to mean. For in other words, a very prominent example of this is the usage of how language originally comes from symbols. Symbolism is one of the main foundational aspects of language, and the study of this the way that symbols mean things to our perception is called semiotics or semiology. And semiotics is the study of how symbols control our perception and how language directly arises from symbols. For in other words, letters are literally nothing but symbols. They are glyphs. They are pictographs. And these letters, originally, they came from pictures of objects, which are used to convey what something is in our world. And so by the study of symbols, you get a deeper meaning of how things originally worked in the world and where things go back to their universal roots. For example, like the swastika is one of the most outlawed and one of the most forbidden symbols to use. And it's literally, I can't even share. So originally, like if I wanted to share an image on Facebook about, you know, how how the constellation of the Big Dipper, how from certain countries, certain parts of the world during different seasons, it basically, due to the rotation of the Earth, it shifts in its axis. So in other words, it makes literally a swastika symbol. So in other words, it's essentially one of the root origins of the swastika symbol. And if you want to share something like that astronomical knowledge, that knowledge of how astronomy works, the stars and the motion of the heavens, if you want to share that with somebody on Facebook, you can't, because you will get banned because it's deemed as hate speech. For example, like I've tried to share that image of, you know, the universal knowledge of how the constellations change over time, and my post got banned for being hate speech because it is the symbol of the swastika, which is related. We associate that with Hitler and the Nazis, but that's not at all what it's actually related to. That's not what it means. That's not where it comes from. That's not, it's basically, you know, it's how symbols and words have been stolen and corrupted throughout history and throughout time. And it's just a travesty the way this goes on and how it happens, and especially without people even realizing it.
Yeah, because it said that the swastika is a vortex, is like an energy. Exactly. But maybe they are also banning it because they don't want us to know the truth.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And again, the truth, the root meanings of the word etymology, it literally means the truth is the root. The root is the truth, or the seed, the very core foundation. It's, in other words, something cannot stand firm. It can't stand. So if you think of a tree cannot stand strong and weather the storm of time and the tests of time that are attacking this thing, unless its roots are deep in a solid foundation, which is the way we build our architectural structures. We lay the solid foundation, which will stand firm. That's what a foundation means. Foundation comes from the roots of literally to stand firm, to stand strong. And you can't stand strong in the truth if you don't have the truth, if you don't know the truth. So that's why truth is literally comes from the root meanings of root itself. Truth is the root. The root is the truth. And so it's just an interesting way that works.
It's for that we must know the root, where is the real root, where is, because they teach to us. I think in the school they don't teach us the reality, the truth, because they say to us maybe it's the Greek, others say maybe it's in Mesopotamia, maybe it's in Anatolia, maybe it's in Iran we say, Iran, Persia, maybe it's India, but I think they know, but they don't want, we know and we understand where is the starting of all this, the root of the language that we are speaking now. Because if we know the starting, if we know the real meaning, the root, we can manage our programmation like a biorobot. But we don't know. Then we are robots that we are moving out with automatic control. No, automatic without control. We cannot be under proprio control.
Self-control.
With self-control. We cannot. For the moment, most of the population, they are managed with the control ajeno, ¿cómo se puede decir?
Alien control, or outside control.
Outside control.
Not our own control.
Not our own control.
Yes.
Yeah, like robots, like program robots.
Yes, now we are like biorobot without self-control.
Yes, that's right. And like any type of programming, what you put in or what you code, what you put in is what you get back out. So if you program something with bad code, the result that you're going to get is bad behavior. And that is exactly how certain groups of people, very bad people in the world, that's how they actually influence people in order to get to literally like a virus in a computer system. They put in bad code in order to influence bad behavior in people. And because that benefits them, because that gives them, it elevates them to a higher sense of power than they actually would have, in a healthy world. For example, like say your certain factions of governments and certain factions of secret societies and satanic groups and people who desire control over other people because they're not comfortable in themselves just being who they are. They don't feel important enough as they are, so they have to elevate themselves by controlling other people and manipulating other people. And we see this in psychosis in forms like narcissism and sociopathy and psychopathy, and people who have this sense of, it's a lack of sense of self, and it's also an over-aggrandizing of their self-importance. So they place themselves as more important than everybody else. And so this is why they would use control to seek power over other people. And that's exactly how you can use programming. Especially, this gets us again into language where we have neuro-linguistic programming. And so the neuro-linguistic programming is the study of how language literally influences our behaviors, and it influences our perception of not just ourselves, but of our worldview at large. And I will be doing future presentations about how this language, especially in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is used, especially by very seemingly loving people, and especially in the New Age community, is programming is very popular. But there are ways that not so good ideologies are being are being seeded in people's minds through the New Age. So New Age isn't bad in and of itself. It comes mostly from old, ancient beliefs and ancient mythologies, ancient practices, and ancient cultural norms of the time. But you know, there's many ways that that is fallacious, but I'm going to be doing future presentations that I haven't revealed to anyone yet about the various ways that language is used to control our minds. And especially, we see this in a lot of movies and a lot of ancient stories and a lot of myths. And it's essentially, we can liken it to the story of the Garden of Eden, where the serpent, basically he whispers into Eve's ear, and we associate the serpent to being deceptive or to being evil, when you know, it could be the exact opposite. It could be, you know, he was wise at least. So the serpent is an ancient symbol of wisdom, because in ancient language and ancient linguistic roots, the serpent is associated with sharpness of vision. And this comes from the ancient Greek language of and Hebrew as well, of kophio, which literally means sharpness of vision in the Strong's Hebrew lexicon. And so it was seen that the serpent has a vision, an ability to perceive beyond what the typical human perception can see. And this attributes scientifically, as the serpent can literally, they have a heat sensing vision, so they can see in the infrared spectrum, so they can see beyond what human perception can see. They can see heat, like many animals can. Many animals can sense outside of our electromagnetic spectrum of ultraviolet and infrared. They can see heat, they can see ultraviolet rays and all of that. But I forget where I'm going with this, is the way that we associate this to basically to being sharp of the tongue. In other words, being very gifted with the tongue and gifted with the speech in order to control people's minds. And we know this through various stories, such as J.R.R. Tolkien's works of The Lord of the Rings, and where, you know, one of his main evil sidekicks to the evil character Sauron was known as Wormtongue. And Wormtongue, the roots of worm literally comes from the Norse roots of orm, which means snake or serpent. And so the worm originally means serpent. It means snake. So Wormtongue literally means speaking with a forked tongue. In other words, with a serpent's tongue. So it's referring to the gift. And so Wormtongue controls the true king of the land. He controls the king by whispering dark spells into his ear, by whispering, you know, these curses or these spells into his ears to control the king's mind. So he keeps him under a dark spell through his forked tongue. So, and we find this all throughout, you know, cultural myths. We find it in Aladdin, where the evil sorcerer Jafar, he carries the serpent staff. So he carries the wisdom and the magic and the sorcery of the serpent. And he controls people's minds. He keeps them under a spell by manipulating them with the serpent staff, which is symbolic of the serpent's tongue, which is symbolic of the language controlling their mind and keeping them under a spell. We also find this in, we find it in the Jungle Book, where the serpent character, the snake, known as Ka, she controls he, in various different versions, he or she, it controls the main character's mind using the spells, the forked tongue of the serpent. And this in Harry Potter, of what's known as parcel tongue, which is essentially, I liken it to basil tongue, which is serpent's, the sharpness of the speech. So in other words, it's using the control of language to control people's perception, to keep them under a spell by a spelling. In other words, casting spells, because the language comes from grammar, which grammar originally comes from a grimoire, which a grimoire is a book of spells. And so it was originally attributed to higher learning, higher knowledge. Grammar literally means the study of higher wisdom, of higher knowledge. And in the ancient world, the only people who were able to read books and to write and had the knowledge of language were the very high priesthood. They were the noble priesthood, the priest class. So in other words, the elite people who only had enough money to be able to write down and to go to school to study these things, coming from ancient Egypt, where only the priest class had enough money to basically to study the art of writing and of language and translation of language and all of that, and through writing down spell books and through the scrolls and the papyrus. So only the priest class were able to afford a Book of the Dead, which granted their passage into the afterlife. And so this was originally the ways that the priesthood and the priest class used ancient knowledge to control the population. By basically, you control a population by keeping them from the knowledge that you have. So this is how, you know, priest classes and priesthoods and the church itself will control the population, is by keeping knowledge locked away and using that knowledge for themselves, but not sharing that knowledge with everyone else. And so I hope I didn't, you know, go too often.
No, I just wanted to point it out how curious it is when you were talking about the Book of the Jungle. The serpent is called Ka, and Ka means human being in our source code, because Sergio, he thinks our source code language is Sumerian, and then, as I told you before, everything spreads in a fractal way. So we have some words in one language and another words in another language that sometimes mean the opposite, you know?
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, do you think a language could have been created by external entities to... It's like we are born with this code in our DNA, right?
The church say that the word belongs to God. The church say. But I think the word doesn't belong to the human being. I think. I would like to hear your opinion.
I think that would be very correct. I think that would be accurate to say that, you know, when we hear language, you know, and we automatically associate that with writing and reading and with spoken word and all of that. But that's you know, that's very limited to what language actually is. Language is literally, it's any form of communication. And the most primordial, the original form of language is essentially it's mathematics. And that is the true universal language. It is objective. You know, you can't misinterpret it and mistranslate it to mean something that it doesn't mean. Or in other words, you know, when people talk about subjectivity versus objective, in other words, perception versus objective truth, you know, you can say 2, you know, 1 + 1 = 2, or you can say 1 + 1 = 3. But there's only one way that happens, and that's you have one thing, one object, one individual, one subject, and then you have another thing, and those two combine, to make two, but it also combines to produce a third object. You have two adults that come together, they mate, they merge, and they produce a third, which is the child. So you have two parents, they produce the third of the child. So that is how 1 + 1 = 3. But if you want to extend that to 2 + 2 = 4, you know, that is the essential, you know, that's the core foundational language of the universal truth that we know and that we can understand is mathematics. And all things stem from number. And this gets us into the study of the quadrivium and the trivium method, which quadrivium is the 4 sciences of math, music, geometry, and astronomy, or in other words, cosmology. So these are all the different measures and study of number. These are all the different forms of studying how number creates our reality, creates our experience. And it's so math is number itself. Geometry is number in space. Music is number in the measure of number in time. So you're measuring, you know, beats per second. You're measuring cycles per second. You're measuring frequency rates, and you're measuring vibrations through the study of music, the study of cymatics. And all of this combined, the way all of these things combine together is what we know of as cosmology, which cosmology comes from the roots of cosmos, which literally means order. And so it originally meant order of the world, or in other words, order of the universe. So it's talking about cymatics. It's talking about how things come into form, how things come into being, how things arise out of chaos. In other words, how structure is created, how pattern is created. And pattern comes from pater, the root of the father. The pattern is what is that masculine aspect of reality, whereas the feminine, chaos, and we covered this in my Symbols of Power Part 3 film as well. We covered how all this symbolism and all this language comes together. But so you have your roots of duality within the very origins of language itself. You have masculine and feminine. You have polarity, one of the main principles of the 7 Hermetic principles of creation. So you have the principle of polarity or duality, how you have masculine and feminine, which come together to produce a third, a trinity, which is what creates new experience, creates new life. And so in other words, language is not just, something that humans possess, it's something that all of nature expresses. All of nature itself arises from language, and reality itself is language.
But why there is so much confusion and misunderstanding with language, whereas with the music and mathematics we can understand perfectly each other? Because with music you can travel around the world, you don't need a language.
Exactly.
But at what time of our human history language was introduced in our DNA as a way of confusion? Like they say the Tower of Babel, but it's much earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's another thing. We could pull up. Let me do screen share real quick. We could pull up this part of my presentation. Desktop share. Where's this one here? Yeah, let's do screen share, and we can switch over here to my presentation. Okay. So yeah, DNA itself is essentially its DNA is composed of music, of vibration. It is composed of not just chemical elements, but what composes that spiral helix is essentially, it's the same structure that all of nature is composed of, and it is that spiral phi ratio fabric of nature, that mathematical pattern of nature that creates not just the DNA, but the DNA is the language of cellular communication. It is how our cells in our body communicate with each other. And so DNA is literally, and modern science has proven that DNA is literally programmed by not just by words, because words are nothing more than sound or vibratory frequency. So DNA is programmed and reprogrammed by essentially by light, by sound, by frequencies, and not just by words, by frequencies itself, by tones, by certain vibratory resonances. And the reason why is because just like anything in nature, when we get into cymatics, any medium, or in other words, any medium of propagation, such as air, water, rock, any type of substance that has form or structure to it, is influenced by vibration. It is composed of vibratory sound and frequency. And so you can change the form and the structure and the pattern of that medium by changing its vibratory frequency, by changing its rate of oscillation, by how fast or how slow it vibrates. And you were talking about how the different languages of the world, you can travel anywhere around the world, and music is essentially, it's a universal language. It's a phenomenon that we all know and we all love, and we all speak these. We have different tastes in music, of course, but it's the fact that music is so influential over our moods, over our emotions, our state of mind, our state of being, which ultimately leads to our state of health. So it's how music itself is literally so intrinsic to what we experience in nature itself. And so back to our DNA, how the language of cellular communication is by the genetic expression. So our genes communicate to our cells how to program. It's the programming that tells our cells how to operate. It tells proteins what to produce and what to make. So it tells proteins what to do, what tasks to perform. You know, genes will upregulate and downregulate depending on epigenetic factors. In other words, our lifestyle behaviors, what we think, the thoughts that we think, the words that we speak, and the music that we listen to. Basically, everything that we experience in life is influential in controlling our genetic expression. And this is one of the main modern revolutions of science, is the study of epigenetics, and how sound and words and vibratory patterns and frequency literally it's not just what controls our DNA, but it is literally what our DNA is made of. Our DNA is a mathematical phi ratio pattern that is originally the true language of communication. And we know this because I'm going to be showing this in many of my future films and presentations as well. I'm writing this for part of the main factor of the new release of one of my books that I'm trying to compile and trying to write, is how the language of mathematics, of form, of frequency, of DNA, of phi ratio patterns, is essentially, it's one of the most intrinsic forms of communication by body language. In other words, by what gives us our shape, what gives us, in other words, the ancients considered beauty. They considered the phi ratio to be the foundational pattern of beauty, and they considered it to be the good and the beautiful. So they considered what was beautiful to also be equated to being good, and what was beautiful was considered to be healthy, because to be healthy means to be whole, and to be whole means you're not fragmented into many different pieces. You are one unified holistic structure, one unified holistic form. And through the phi ratio, this is what we consider to be beautiful, is the ratio of harmony in nature, such as the flower of life in sacred geometry, the structural pattern of a sunflower, or of many different plants in nature. They grow in this phi ratio pattern, this phi ratio structure. And so does the human body. So the human body is literally composed of this language of nature. And so that is ultimately, one of the most core foundational structures of, again, of language. And I forget where I was going with this, and I forget it. I don't want to be veering too far off track from what your original question was, but I hope that provides a lot of clarity and a lot of things to think about. And we could go a lot deeper into that. That would be a very big subject, and it is a big subject, and we could go on for a very long time about those things, but especially that in and of itself right there.
Do you think that maybe the humanity are under hypnosis by the serpent with the frequencies of the world, like this image? Because this maybe there we have the truth. In this image, they say, we think that it's fairy tale, but it's not fairy tale. Maybe it's the truth. The humanity are under hypnosis by the serpent. Then the serpent are not so friendly, I think so.
Yes, well, like all things, there is a duality, there is a polarity to that. And so, we could get into my full presentation here, but it's one of my new ones, and I haven't released this anywhere else, so I don't really want to give it away in just the talk. I want to save it to, I'm going to do a full video or a full film about it, and it's also going into many of my future presentations, and it's a main part of my book. But it's essentially what I was talking about earlier with parcel tongue, and I associate this to comforting lies, which we associate to sweetness or honey, or in other words, soft-spoken, sweet-sounding lies that are basically they're convenient, not truths. They're the opposite of the truth. They're convenient deceptions that sound good to the. It's basically, they sound good, but it's just a facade. It's just a false. It's a shell. It's a mask. It's a deception. It's a illusion. Whereas the inconvenient truth is that harsh reality that we don't want to hear. We don't want to listen to it because it destroys that beautiful illusion that we hold. So people have so many illusions, so many beliefs, so many programs that we run that are taught to us early on in life. And we're taught these in so many different ways by, our parents' beliefs. They pass this on to us so many ways. But so in other words, we're talking the duality between honey and between vinegar. So vinegar is bitter, or it's not bitter, but it's sour. And we associate sourness and bitterness to being harsh and to being bad. It's distasteful. Nobody wants, it's not sweet. It's not pleasurable. It doesn't release that dopamine sensation in the neural centers of the brain, in the pleasure senses of the limbic system of the brain, which trigger our addictive responses. So in other words, we want the sweet stuff. We want what's sweet. We want what sounds good. People want to hear what is comforting. They want to be comforted. They want things to be soft and fuzzy and fluffy and warm. They don't want things to be harsh and sharp and piercing and penetrating, which is what the truth is. The truth is all of these things. The truth is a full spectrum. It is all of these things. But, we have this duality of, so this whole part of the presentation that I want to bring to people's attention is through the study of allegory, through what J.R. Tolkien wrote so poignantly, through his archetypal characters of Wormtongue and Saruman. Saruman is the sorcerer, and his little decrepit, degenerate sidekick Wormtongue, that speaks with the forked tongue, and Saruman himself was a sorcerer who used the smooth, soft, comforting tone of his speech and his spelling to control people's minds, to put them under a spell, to where they thought he was the most amazing thing ever as soon as he started speaking, because he spoke with such a smooth, sweet, rhythmic tone that just hypnotized people. It just lured them into this soft, buttery speech of the way that his tone was just addictive, and it just hypnotized you. And that's exactly what neurolinguistic programming is. It's hypnosis. In order to it's a tool. Like any tool, you can use it for both good or bad. You can use it to control people, or you can use it to wake them up, to shake them out of a pattern that they've been programmed in their whole life, and to put them onto a new path. So like any tool, like psychedelic mushrooms or like LSD or any other, these are tools. They are meant to be used in a respected way in order to shift our perception, to shift our consciousness into a new way of being. And so we have this contrast of Saruman, the sorcerer, and Gandalf, the wizard. So let me pull up a visual just to give people an idea of these two different characters, in case they're somehow not familiar with the two different characters. So Gandalf is the character who speaks the harsh truth that you don't necessarily want to hear, but that will always benefit you, whether you want to hear it or not. He will speak harshly of people when it's necessary. Whereas Saruman, the sorcerer who seeks control over people and deception, he's the one who will use the fabrication of the sweet-sounding tones. And this is what we find in the New Age community, so much in so many deceptive ways. Through they speak with soft tones, and they comfort you through the use of, we don't speak that. And in my work, I'm not afraid of using curse words. I'm not afraid to. I like to use curse words because it's, number one, I find it humorous. I find it to be a way to, it's a way I convey humor. It's how I, show my realness, my rawness. It's the way that I show that I'm not trying to, put on a false facade that is not who I am. I'm showing.
I agree with you. We have to kick people's asses.
Yes.
Wake up!
Yes.
You are dreaming.
Yes.
You are sleeping.
yes, there are times that people need to be shaken. You know, there are times when people need to be comforted and they need to be consoled and they need to be supported. You know, during times of hardship, times of loss, you know, times where that they're disturbed. You know, people need to be comforted. So what we're talking about are like the scales of balance here, the universal scales of balance, the way things ebb and flow in nature. So we're talking about how things form into structure and they also dissolve into amorphous chaos. So we're talking
but they are taken with the fear. They are taken with the fear. They don't want to wake up because they are fear. They don't want the truth because they are afraid.
Yeah, because they don't want to think that they have wasted all his life for nothing. And they prefer to sleep in their hot shit. Claro, it's true. What do you prefer, the cold truth or your hot shit? Your hot shit?
That's great. That's perfect. Yes, I couldn't have said it better myself. It was perfect. Yes, steaming hot shit. Yes, exactly. It's funny.
To be more accurate, steaming.
Steaming, exactly. You know, that's funny. There's so many different jokes we can make about that.
Some people, when they wake up, they don't know what to do. Then they say, okay, I'm gonna sleep again.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I wake up. What can I do? Nothing. I don't know.
Go to the New Age.
maybe clean your ass first.
Yes.
No, one thing about the New Age you were talking about now, they are now bombarding us with union. We have to be united.
Mm-hmm.
But one sentence I heard that I like it too much. It was, union creates fragility. So you better fortify yourself and be an example for the others. You know what I mean? If you see poor people, don't be poor like them to be in their shoes. Be rich and be an example, and they will follow your example.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
To lead by example, and yes, there is great strength in unity. You know, that is, strength is in numbers, and strength is also in uniformity. And uniformity, this goes back to fractal geometry, to sacred geometry, to harmonic music. You know, when different notes of the musical scale are all in harmony with each other, they're all in balance. They are all in tune with each other, which creates a chord. It creates as opposed to discord. A chord is unity. A chord is a single structure. It is a string. It is a vibratory, like a guitar string. A guitar string is literally, it's a wound cable. So it's taking multiple strands and you're weaving a rope with it. And this gets us back into mythology and the ancient roots of mythology, and studies about that is how the most mythologies and core theologies, they have a myth or a story about the universe being woven into existence. They have a divine weaver, or in other words, like the Native Americans have spider grandmother who weaves the fabric of the universe together. The Greek tradition has the Norns, or the Fates, who are the ones who weave. They spin the wheel of time. The wheel of time is what is the spindle that spins these fabrics of existence together. And each one of us, each one of our lives, our life is considered a timeline. It's like a string. It's a strand of time. And all of these strings, these strands are woven together to form this structure, this tapestry that we call reality, to create this, this universal experience that we are all sharing together in unity and harmony. But it is consisted of individuality. Individuality is what precedes the universal harmony. So it gets back into this universal dance of all things coming from a united source, a form of oneness and a form of unity, which essentially was attributed to chaos. I mean, because what else are you going to consider it? You're going to consider it's just some something, all possibility. It contains everything within it, all possible outcomes. It contains all probability. You know, so what else could it be other than just, you know, pure chaos? But we associate chaos to being a bad thing. But, you know, chaos is not just a bad thing. I mean, you know, especially when we consider society and versus order. And this is what, you know, the Freemasonries and secret societies and ancient mythologies, you know, this contemplation of order versus chaos, or structure, form versus amorph, the opposite of, what's the opposite of form? Just, you know, fluidity. So I forget where I'm going with this, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it is, you know, we go off into tangents, and it just, you know, it can take us anywhere. So it's amazing. It's what I love talking about. It's what's fun to talk about. But I don't know if I was going anywhere specific with that. And just get lost.
No, we were just talking about unity on the new age conception of we should be all united and
yeah. I don't necessarily consider that to be a harmful thing in and of itself. That's not what I consider to be like a dangerous tenet or philosophy of the New Age things that they propagate. What I consider to be more harmful would be to be the main point of that presentation that I'm going to be talking about, is the difference between comforting lies versus harsh truths. You know, so the main problem with this tenet of the New Age community is that, oh, take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. So in other words, take what you like from something and leave the rest behind, or ignore the rest, or throw the rest away. So in other words, that's cherry picking. And as when you get into things like science and health and nutrition, or, you know, any type of something that is very important to understand for your own life and your own well-being, and for everyone, all of us together as a whole, when you get into really important things like that, cherry picking is a very bad thing. And you can't properly make really healthy and really good life decisions if you're cherry picking what you want reality to be. If you're trying to make reality what you want it to be. So in other words, you know, and also in the New Age community, we hear all these phrases like, you create your reality. You know, you create reality is what you make it. You know, the world is what you make of it. You know, even Terence McKenna propagated a lot of this BS in his lectures about, you know, the world is what you, quote unquote, you know, in his lectures, the world is what you want it to be. And the world is what we make of it with our speech. And, you know, that's relativism. And later on, towards the end of his life, just before he died, I think he started to realize just how dangerous this ideology that he had been propagating his whole career had become. And he started to openly denounce relativism, which is the idea that you can just make things whatever you want them to be. And there is some, you know, there's this perspective to that where it is true in certain contexts, but in the larger, you know, objective context, it's not true. Like, you can't just make something what you want it to be. You know, reality is what it is, and you have to accept that for what it is. You know, you have to accept it, and it comes down to that wisdom proverb of, you know, grant me the grace to accept the things that I can't change, and the strength or resolve to change the things that I forget exactly how it goes, but it's that proverb, very wise proverb, and very poignant and timeless, because it makes a lot of sense. You know, there are things that we can't change that we have to accept. You know, things like, we can make a joke like birth, death, and taxes, you know, but that's not the truth. You know, that's not something that we accept. You know, we can change the fact about taxes. You know, we can change that. That's something we can change, nor should we ever accept. You know, there are things that we should not accept that need to be changed. You know, so so I forget what I'm going with all these things, but we can't just make reality what we want it to be. You know, there are certain parts that of reality we have to come to terms with. We have to accept. And so you can't just take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind, because this gets us into cognitive bias. This is the 12 different forms of cognitive bias. You know, there's confirmation bias, where we only believe the things that we want to be true. There's, it's which is essentially cherry picking. You're only taking things that you want, that you like, and leaving all the rest that you don't like, even if those things are actually true. But it makes me feel bad. I don't like. It kind of makes me scared a little bit. I don't like that much. Ooh, I don't like the tone of his. Yeah, I get a lot of people. Not too many people telling me specifically, but a lot of people I admire and I respect. Like one of my good friends, Christopher Lord. Everyone's always telling me they can't listen to his mind-blowing information because they don't like the sound of his voice. Or I'm like, who cares about the sound of his voice? What makes that is irrelevant. It's entirely irrelevant to the truth of the information that he's speaking.
Because as you said before, they want the soft voice.
Exactly. They want the sweet, smooth sounding. They want that soft, they want what resonates with them. But the problem with that is what resonates with you. So we're talking about wave harmonics here. We're talking about phase conjugation. We're talking about things flowing in harmony. So this is your frequency, for an example. This is my frequency, for an example. So they're vibrating at different frequencies, and they interact to create a third, what's called a wave interference pattern in physics or in science. So all things are vibratory patterns. All things vibrate. All things are sound. All things resonate. Well, resonation actually means when things come into harmony. They come into to resonance. They come into phase conjugation. But the opposite of phase conjugation is incoherence, or in other words, it's destructive interference. So you have coherence and you have interference patterns. And so if it was everyone is vibrating at a different frequency, everyone is resonating at a different frequency based on all the different thoughts, the beliefs that they hold, the programs and the patterns that they are running, literally the patterns, the pater, the cymatic frequency that they are operating at. And so what resonates with you does not necessarily resonate with me, but that does not mean that what you're saying isn't true just because it doesn't resonate with me. You can be saying the truth and you can be presenting the actual facts. And if I don't like the way the facts, make me feel, that's irrelevant to determining what the truth is and what how we should live our lives in accordance to that truth. We should always seek to live our lives in accordance with truth. And, that's how language and sound and, vibration and etymology and cymatics applies directly to all of this thing. It is literally the foundational, the core structure that creates all of these things. And so, again, we're talking about how, again, Gandalf is the wise wizard, the wise one, the wizard. Wizard literally comes from the wiser, the old wise one, the one who carries the wisdom. He's the old one, and we associate age with wisdom because you gain wisdom and knowledge as you progress, as you get older. You gain knowledge through experience.
The Gandalf, the guy with the gun. No, because we are always playing with words.
Yes. Well,
no, but as you said, people that we are interweaving in the same way, we always come together at the end. Mm-hmm. Look at us. We are in very different countries and we are here talking about the same thing. So who cares about the others? I think everybody has their own microcosmos. And
yes.
Who has the truth, finally? Yes. Who's the holder of the truth?
Well, that's exactly how it works. And, you take a bunch of clocks, you put all these different clocks in a room, you tune them to, you wind them up to different times and everything. And at first it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. You get all these different chimes. The clocks are chiming at different times. They're all out of sync with each other. But eventually, over time, all those clocks will start to synchronize in perfect harmony with each other. And, this is just a fact of science. It's a fact of physics. And, for people who don't like facts, I'm in a huge battle on all my pages with everybody hates facts. Everybody, they denounce facts. There's no such thing as facts. There's no such thing as truth. truth is what you want it to be. Truth is what you make it. Everyone's got their own truth. Her truth. They've all got their truth. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got a belief, and that's all there is. There's nothing more than beliefs. There is no facts, are nothing more than just collective beliefs, and that's all garbage. Because
there is always a logical line. Even if you have your own truth, there is always a logical line to follow.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, there's a core pattern. There's a core structure. Like. That is what the clocks are coming into synchronicity with. They are coming into balance, into harmony with each other. And the fact that they do that is a fact. That's something that we can't change. That's something that happens. And a fact is considered, it's literally that which has occurred in the past. Or in other words, it's something that can be proven, that can be known. And so this gets us into the duality of reality. Esoteric and exoteric, inner world and outer world, microcosmos, macrocosmos, as above, so below. So this is the duality of reality. That is how it is. We can't change that. So for anyone to say that one aspect of reality is more important than the other one is completely wrong. It's delusional, because yes, we change ourselves. That can ultimately change the way that we interact in the world, and therefore change the world by extension to ourselves. Or we can change the world, and that will change our behavior. So it's a two-way street. It goes both ways. Change, it happens. It's an interface, and both are very much important. Both are very much important. And so, people will say that, so this is also what we know of as gnosis and science. Gnosis comes from Greek, literally meaning knowledge, to know. Gnosis means it's knowledge by experience. So in other words, it's personal knowledge. It's what you know to be true because you've experienced it directly, and nobody can take that away from you because that's your experience. It's what you know to be true. But what most people really hate and really don't like is science. They really hate the fact that science is a good way to actually analyze the way the world works. And they do this because the fact that science has been controlled and manipulated, and that, a lot of science is fabricated, a lot of it is false, and a lot of it is fake. So they use the fact that some of it is fake and a lot of it is fake, and even maybe most of it might be fake, but they use that to just ignore all of it altogether. And that's ignoring basically the external reality, because gnosis is your internal truth. Science is how we know the world around us.
It's evolution. If we don't count on science, we go back to the Middle Ages.
Yeah, you go back to the Dark Ages is what it is. Back to the world of belief, and this is where we're heading. This is where it's I see it happening every single day, more and more, and it's making me really bitter, and it's making me really frustrated, and it's really pissing me off, to be quite honest. Is because, it's like no matter how much I try to share, the truth with people, and I've never experienced this before at any time in my life before. I've always been able to speak whatever I wanted, say whatever I wanted, share whatever I wanted, and people just, they were like, that's awesome. Yeah, that you presented your facts, your evidence. That makes perfect sense. Yes, but it's not like that anymore. In the past couple of years, the past 2 or 3 years, everything has changed. People are now openly at war with, very simple truths that can be validated and verified. And it all comes down to this fake news stuff, this fake news, and, and all of it, essentially, again, the control of language, the manipulation of language and the manipulation of terminology. What people think something means to themselves is entirely different of what it actually means in reality. And, so this is ultimately how language is so important. But, I wanted to bring it back to language because I didn't want to go off into my own rants as to what I'm going through right now, personally. But yeah, so I just wanted to try to bring it back to language since that's what we want this talk to be about.
When did you realize language was so polluted, we could say? Or it has been...
Well, a lot of my friends, a lot of the people I listen to, made this very clear. Jordan Maxwell made it clear. A lot of
Jordan
people
Maxwell, we know him.
about universal commercial code, admiralty law, and essentially legally the legal control of language. How literally, and not only that, but how court systems literally govern every aspect of commerce and every aspect of our lives, whether we want to accept this or not, whether this makes you feel good or not, whether this resonates with you or not. I could care less. It matters not what resonates with, what makes you feel good, or if it makes you upset or scares you. Who cares? Your feeling is irrelevant to the truth. And so that's ultimately, all of this stuff liberates me. I love this stuff. I love learning, always have. When somebody tells me something that I don't want to hear, I thank them. It's valuable knowledge. Unless it's just complete disinformation, unless it's completely easily debunkable and disprovable garbage, then that's what pisses me off. That's the only thing that makes me angry. Nothing else affects my emotional state other than people blatantly lying about stuff that can be easily disproven. And not only that, but they won't want to engage in factual discourse. They won't provide any evidence for their claims. They just say, oh, it's true because I said it is. Oh, because it's my personal experience. I'm like, I don't care what your experience is. You have to validate your experience for other people to be able to relate to your experience. And again, this gets into inner world, outer world. It's like your experience is irrelevant to other people, unless they can actually relate to it. The way to relate to that is you got to present your case. You got to make, present your evidence. You got to make it believable to other people by showing them why it's true, how it's true. This is when, where, what, why, how. Essentially the scientific method, the process by which we come to know things. And but yeah, so uniform commercial code, legalese, admiralty law, all of that stuff is ultimately what's really opened my eyes to how language is so important and is so easily manipulated by the court system, which ultimately governs every aspect of our lives. It controls, how we think, how we behave, what we do, what we speak, all of this, all controlled by government. Government literally meaning to mind control, to control the mind. In other words, to steer, to govern literally comes from the one who steers a ship. You are the governor of the ship. You're the one at the wheel. You're at the helm. You're in the captain's seat. You are the controller. You are the captain steering your ship. And, ship ultimately, a lot of these people talking about word spells and stuff, they'll be like, oh, ship is in all these different words, citizenship, relationship.
Yes, true.
We're all on the ship, and you can take that literally, but it actually means the ship is an act of. It's a state of being. You are in a relationship. You are in the state of relating to each other. It's a state
relationship. Chip is oveja.
It's sheep.
Sheep. Relationship. Relationship.
That's great. Yeah.
Take note.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought of that. This is why
relationship.
This is why people from different cultures and speak different languages and different dialects. This is why it's so important to understand, to gain new perspectives about what what languages and what words mean. Because ultimately the study of etymology is all about how sounds change over time. And that's what changes the words over time is how the sound changes over time. And we know this because different cultures pronounce different words differently. And that's what makes the spelling so important and so amazing to study. And because when you understand how the different sounds are created, you understand how the word changes over time. You understand that, and I don't know too many of the technical aspects of, and this is one of the most important things that I really want, some actual professional linguists, some real historical linguists to teach me more about. And I've been looking all over the place for real high quality linguists to teach me more of this stuff about things like declension, which is how vowels will shift over time. You know, how vowels can change. Because a lot of the original root languages, like Hebrew, they didn't have written vowels. They only had the spoken vowels, the vowels to L, the vowels. And I've associated in my work, I've come to sort of, maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but from sort of just the resonance that I pick up through all the study and all the writing that I've done, is that the vowels are literally there, that a, I, a, e, I, o, u.
Yeah, that's like in Spanish. We only have 5 vowels, but you have so many. And
really?
look, Arabic, I think they have, I don't know, so many. And Thai, they have 14.
Wow.
But that's why when we study English, we can see things that maybe it doesn't sound the same for us. Because for us, sheep and sheep is the same.
Sheep.
That's why you will never realize it could be the same, because for you is sheep and sheep. You really notice the change. But for a Spanish person, sheep is sheep, you know, like shit is shit, sheet of paper.
That's great.
And we have short videos analyzing words like heart. How can you say heart the same as heart? It's unbelievable. English language is unbelievable.
Wait, which 2 words are you comparing there? All I hear is like heart. Like,
I don't remember. We have so many. We made some videos. We will make more in the future.
You mean like hearth and heart, or like
heart, papa, and hurt. You know, like,
you mean like
hurting somebody with a knife or with a weapon, or hurting your feelings. But for us, hurt and heart.
Or heart with fart. Like infarctus, eh? If you have an infarctus, it's because you are full of fart.
Yeah, as you can imagine, our book is very, very funny.
Open your ass for us, no? The English is awful, like Spanish language. But it's very, very, ¿cómo se dice? Divertido.
Funny.
Funny. It's very funny.
Yeah, we laugh so much. We work very hard.
We play with the words.
We worked for a year, sometimes until 4 a.m, but we were laughing so much.
I know how that works. Yes, that's exactly how I work too. Yeah, it's very hard, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, very rewarding at the end.
It is. You the sense of humor that you can gain is absolutely amazing. Yeah, you guys, y'all are just as wild as I am. Yeah, I
for sure.
I have a ridiculous sense of humor. A lot of people don't understand it.
Because we don't care about other people's opinions. As far as you feel free, I care a damn. So because nobody's coming to pay my bills, so why should I feel affected by other people's opinions? You know?
Well, unless it's aligned with the facts. You know, that's the only time you should care about their opinions.
Yeah.
If it's actually true. You know, but that's the thing is, are their opinions nothing more than opinions, or is it a fact? This is what these people are just, they can't accept this. I don't understand what is going on with the world today. Relativism is absolutely, it's getting out of control. And yeah, I can't believe what's happening with people's minds these days. It's, you know, and it wasn't like that just a few years ago. You know, everybody, like, I could see, it was literally like everyone was on the same page. Essentially, it was like, okay, we're understanding that government has very bad agendas afoot. You know, they're not doing good things. You know, and then Donald Trump came along, and then all of a sudden, like, everybody just goes their all these separate ways, and everybody starts fighting with each other about just all these different, you know, everything, race, religion, you know, all of those things were already, you know, divisions in and of themselves. But it was like things were starting to gaining good momentum. Like people were actually starting to wake up, like really waking up. Like I was having a lot of success with all my videos. People were really, people were understanding it. We were all on the same page. Things were going all in the right direction, in a good direction. People were waking up. The world was waking up, and now they're not. Now all I see is everyone's going vastly, more rapidly asleep. Like people are just going right back to sleep, and they think they're waking up, but they're waking up into a delusion. Like they're waking up into a fantasy realm, and they think they're waking up, and it's not happening. People are going fast asleep very quickly, as far as I can see. And wasn't like that up until a couple of years ago. Something happened. Disinformation started kicking in. People really, I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't too aware of all of the stuff that was going on. But now it's getting really bad. Like people they have no bearing on reality whatsoever. They don't know how to discern truth or reality.
It was your fault. You opened the bottle of.
And in some ways, I think it might have been like, especially with a lot of the language and the spelling and stuff. Like, I see a lot of people doing some of the language stuff that is entirely untrue, and it's not that. I mean, sure, maybe they're learning, some new perspectives about things on their own, but like I see a lot of people, doing sort of words. I guess you could call it word spelling type stuff that's just incredibly inaccurate. And like so what I've been doing over these past years is I've been refining. Like I started out like really sort of vague, and I'm a little embarrassed of some of my earlier works, like
like fornication. No, I think your videos are great.
Yeah, yeah. But what I mean is that I'm learning, I've come so far. Like since since my very first video, which was my most popular one, The Truth About English, the one that I do the word spelling and, do a little bit of the spoken word and the poetic stuff like that, introducing people to how language can easily control your perception, make you think entirely different things, make you think diametrically opposed to what someone else is thinking. But I've come along so far since then. Like I've been trying to refine my work to become more credible, to make it more accurate, and that's what the truth does. Is I'm cutting away all the stuff that's not true, that I used to think that I thought was true, but it actually isn't. And so I do that all throughout my life. I change my perspective a lot and very rapidly, and I think that's why. A lot of people can't really relate to what I'm doing anymore. It's because I've changed so fast that a lot of people are still just not able to keep up. But I always try and, keep people up on my level. I try and, bring them with me and explain everything I'm talking about and explain it in a very easy to understand way so that it makes sense. And I always show my work. I show them where I'm getting my information from. I show all of my sources. I show my work so that they know I'm not just making stuff up.
Yeah, but it happened the same to us, that when Sergio started, now he looks back and he thinks, wow. It's like when you start, you are walking step by step, but once you are in, you are growing, thriving exponentially. Mm-hmm. So it goes so fast that sometimes you can't follow your own yourself. Yes. Because you have so much information coming that you don't know where to put it, and it goes very fast.
We are not here for lick ears.
¿For?
Para chupar orejas.
To lick ears.
I don't know if I followed that one.
No, para que no estamos aquí para decir lo que la gente quiere escuchar.
He means that we are not here to
say that the people want to hear.
To listen to.
To listen to.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Just to tell what we think is
Yep.
It's what it is.
Yeah, what it is. We're not here to tell people what we want it to be or what they want it to be. We're here to tell it like it is, like it actually is. That's what the etymology is. It's the true sense of the study of the true sense. The roots. The truth is the root. The root is the truth. And that's what it all comes back to. The truth is where all things come from. It's what all things go back to. It's that sense of oneness. It is that source. The source, the origin. The well from which all things spring. If you think about it, the term wellspring. And, I've got a deep etymological breakdown in a lot of my new presentations in my book I'm writing. It's a huge... just goes off into all of these ones I'm working on now. Like, that's why I haven't published anything new, any new videos in a couple of years, or any, is because it's getting so big. Like you were saying, it's expanding so much. Like, when I start getting into the thing, when I start like writing it down, researching it, and all the pieces just start falling into place, and it gets so big so fast that like there's no way I can possibly get it out in a timely manner. Like, it's too much for me to handle on my own. Like,
and now you have an emporium with your webpage, lifting the veil. Well, so should we finish?
Yeah. I think we covered some good ground.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was a little worried at first. I was like, I haven't prepared enough for this one. I didn't know what I was going to talk about.
And now you see 2 hours talking.
This is your web page. I gonna put now. This is lifting the veil.
Yes.
Yeah, because CULLEN, he's a musician, an author, everything.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you want to go to his page, that's his page.
Patreon.com.
Metaphysics, symbolism, occult sciences, linguistics, mythology, mysticism, esoterica, health and nutrition, and so much. Because you also do counseling and everything, right?
Yes. People can consult with me. They can ask me anything they want me to. Once they sign up, I can do personal coaching. I can teach you whatever you want to know, specific topics that you're interested in, as long as I am knowledgeable in those things. Basically a researcher for hire. I will research things that you want to know more about. My website again is patreon.com/liftingtheveil. And the links to it are all over. It's on my Facebook page, it's on my Twitter, on my Instagram, on my YouTube channel. Lifting the Veil, you can find me on all the social media platforms. So I'm very easy to find.
Do you sleep? Do you have time to sleep?
Yes, I do have time to sleep. Actually, surprisingly, I don't need very much sleep. I really need like maybe 5 hours sleep at the most. I'm good to go. I don't sleep a whole lot. I don't really need to, but yes.
Yeah, 5 hours is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't sleep a whole lot, but I do try to get as much rest as I can. But yeah, with all the work I'm doing, it takes forever. It takes all day long, all day and all night. It takes all my time. I mean, so it gets very challenging. It is very challenging. It does get it's very hard. It's not easy. It's definitely not. The hardest part is doing the social media. Doing the social media and actually getting the work that I want to get out. I can't get all the work out and do the social media at the same time. Like impossible. I need somebody to do my social media for me, so I can just focus on getting the work done. It's too hard to manage it all on my own. But yeah, so that's where people can find me. If you guys want to check out some more information, I've got plenty of stuff to share, and plenty more in the works. I've got so many more new stuff coming out very soon. I'm working on several full new films that are almost done right now. And I'm working on writing
films. You're also a film producer.
somewhat, yeah. Not professional, but I do the best I can.
Okay. Maybe we'll catch up with you when you publish your book.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I've got so much more. Literally, the stuff that I'm keeping under wraps right now is absolutely astonishing. Like not just the language, but the symbolism. I mean, so much. Like the stuff that I've done in my videos is only just barely scratching the surface of what I'm really producing right now. The hard part is actually getting it finished. And actually
There's never an end.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for this nice conversation.
Thank you so much, CULLEN.
For your time.
Yes. Thank you, MONOR. Thank you, both of you.
And we also want to remind our viewers where our web page is, and you can get the book in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. And if you have a doubt or you want to write to us, you can write to my email, rosana@monor.org. And that's all. Tomorrow we have another show.
Another show.
Maybe. About giants. Human history.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Right.
I wish you the best, CULLEN. I hope you can continue all your work and you have a lot of success. And maybe see you in another hangout.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Next year.
When you'll have your own channel and on TV.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Here you have your window for you. You have the window for you.
We have we call our space your window, and we call our space we all have something to say. So whenever you want to say curse words, we are here.
This window this window is open for you.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Well, good luck. Music?
Good luck. Music. See you another time. Music? No.
No? No music.
¿Cómo que no music? Of course, yes.
Rap music.
Right now.
Through me, but I see through them.
Bye-bye.
Get so dark, can't peek through the vents. We'll leap through your fence, and I'm rolling with a motherfucking click that's tighter than Anderson's friends. And it depends how I'm feeling today. I'll pick up a bar, then I'm slamming away. Can we debate that I may be the best? I'm a hushing haters up like putting babies to rest. I hustle around these fakes so they baby stress. My weed so strong that a baby just flex. Lately I got my haters depressed, and I leave them impressed, but they loving it though. Only thing I don't do is show